Lacan, I see your question, and I have a very similar question coming up after those polling questions, so we're going to address that shortly. Let's go with polling question number 1, Miles, if you don't mind throwing that up there. The question, this is for you, the audience, to respond to. Which of these is the most formidable challenge your R&D organization faces? The regulatory gauntlet, short of R&D talent, integration of advanced technologies like organ on a chip, in silico modeling, et cetera, developmental risk assessment, decision-making, R&D investment allocation, developing and implementing consistently executable R&D policies and procedures, or organizational bureaucracy. Remember, this is anonymous, so if you choose organizational bureaucracy, you will not be named. Also, if you have an other that you want to mention, just go ahead and feel free to dump that into the Q&A box. So take a minute and respond to that poll. And we'll jump back to Bob here. And Bob, I'm going to try again to dovetail a question here. The question I had for you is at a high level, another general one. How do you screen and test potential therapeutic molecules to get from the big scoop of gravel to the small vial of gold?
So I think it really depends upon the area that you're in. It has to be custom fit to what you need to get to. So for instance, if you know your disease state, and maybe you actually have to screen against like an overexpressed cellular system, really getting to understanding as close to mimic the biology, either on the cellular side or in vivo, that's one of the things that I think is most important, right? So you have all of this design that you can do, you're bringing in drug-like properties, you want to make sure that you're advancing and making decisions. And Nadim talked about this before, right? Having, go, no-go decision points, making like in your screening file or your decision tree is really the critical part about whether something should advance or not.
Yeah. So a great segue. Lacan's question that I promised him I'd get to. Apart from the potency, activity of the molecules, what other attributes will drive the decision to progress? For example, will manufacturability or developability impact a go, no-go decision? So Bob, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes, absolutely. So long gone are the days where you develop a molecule and you're going after potency, and then you find out that it's brick dust, right? And then you figure out a way to formulate it, and you throw it over the wall. It's really a partnership within the organization to make sure that the downstream processes that need to happen to turn it from the bench into a drug are in place. So you really want to understand the drug-like properties of both the small molecule and the large molecule moving forward so that it can get to patients and get to patients in a form that is actually friendly to the patient.
Mm-hmm. Is there a standard time where those manufacturability and developability assessments take place, Bob, in your experience?
Yeah, the earlier the better. Like if you think about let's say 10 years ago where these concepts were really coming into play, like on the chemistry side of things first, it was happening right away. So you do your efficacy study, then you move into your ADME and other properties to really understand the molecule. And then that would be an iterative SAR design that the chemists would do. And they had these, these big lab notebooks that were the size. Remember when you're in school, the desk, it was like that size. Mm-hmm. It was like 40-pound laptops that these guys are walking around with this, but they could integrate all of that data and drive things. Now it's much more compact and decisions are made so much better with the tools that we have, but it's the same thing. And now that's transitioned into the large molecule space as well too, where you would look at things like viscosity and other parameters and really decide on the best molecule to move forward.
Yeah, I would agree. And the only thing I would add, especially in the biotech space, Matt, is that often we need to invest at risk a little bit here, because if you don't make the spend early, per what Bob was saying, it can really catch up later with you. Like when you get that good result, then you don't want to be in a position where you're scrambling around and then your manufacturing becomes on the rate limiting critical path. So sometimes, if you have conviction in your molecule, you will have to do some spending at risk, but the payoff is big when you kind of hit that data point. But look, sometimes it's not going to work out, but that's something I've definitely learned over the years.
Excellent. Sheila's expanding on her question. I'm going to throw that out to you. The utilization of AI and technology can be a pain point with R&D. I foresee many life science professionals needing a basic knowledge. This is a terrific point. Do you plan to invest in specific AI and technologies training? So Nadim, since you're big on my screen right now, what might that initiative look like at Cullinan? Are there like, you know, is it a skunk? Does it remain a skunk works operation, or is there a broader, I guess, initiative to bring people up to speed on these tools at Cullinan?
Sure. Maybe I'll address it in the way Bob kind of described it earlier on. There's the internal and the external. And I think what we're going to for sure see is, the very large companies are going to be able to kind of invest in this internally and, build, big platforms and things that maybe biotech companies won't be able to do given the capital required to do that. But I also think there'll be companies out there, the external companies, who will have the requisite expertise for then the biotech companies kind of to tap into to be able to do some of this this work that will kind of speed up the R&D process for sure. So this is something actually that we're very actively looking at now, and to see kind of, for Cullinan Oncology, what's the right fit for us to be able to kind of explore this space. And I think it's going to be very context dependent, depending on where you are, kind of either in the life cycle or the size of your company as well. But certainly an area that, will, I'm sure, change many, many things. And I think it's now, for me, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And, we're starting to see the glimpses of where this can really make a big impact. So for us, it's something we're looking at. And I think it will largely be context dependent, depending on the resources you have available to you. Yeah.
Bob, any comment there on how Amgen is embracing, I guess, more organization-wide? Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, you do have we have groups that are really specializing in this and bringing it forward, and you have then that interface between the scientists and then the data scientists really that are driving this, and it's really fascinating to see because they're coming together and they're really making big differences. And the first place where it really stood out in terms of, we talked about before, the efficiencies that we had in driving down the time from a biologic discovery to the time when it's actually ready to go into testing has come down significantly. So that iterative cycle, working within the teams to get at that is really, it's been very good to see that and understand that within it. And there's even more that's coming. I mean, so there's going to be even greater emphasis on this as we move forward. And it's the data that keeps generating that then leads to different iterations that will make things even better moving forward into the future.
Excellent. Miles, let's take a look at the polling question results. Pull those up and have a look. So it looks like developmental risk assessment and decision making looks to be the leading challenge R&D organizations are facing, followed by developing and implementing consistently executable R&D policies and procedures and organizational bureaucracy. Nadim and Ahmed, Nadim and Bob, I want to just get your thoughts on it. Just quick reflections on the results of that poll. Bob, I mean, what do you think? Any surprises there?
So the developability piece for me, I wonder if that's coming from the smaller types of organization. I would say that that's probably not the case within Amgen. So the risk is defined very rapidly in terms of what acceptable criteria would be for a molecule to move forward, both small and large. So that criteria is set, the bar is known, and you have to get over that bar before you advance.
Nadim, does that developability challenge resonate a little bit more with you in a smaller organization?
Yeah, actually, for us, if I were thinking what could be some of the pain, so that definitely resonates with me. I think for us, probably if I were doing this poll for my company, I would probably pick R&D investment allocation. Obviously, we don't necessarily have all the capital that some of the large organizations have. So for us, it's really balancing when we see an interesting signal, when we see something exciting. How are we able to kind of resource the most exciting molecules versus, other molecules we have in our pipeline? And that's a constant, kind of leadership team discussion, and making sure that, again, if you have very clear go, no goes, you can kind of work your way through that. But that is one that, we often are considering around, when we bring molecules to IND and then into the clinic, how do we best allocate our resources? And then even when you think about R versus D, right, it depends on the stage of where your company is at, right? As you go from R, to D, then obviously development, higher spend, you go to commercialization, then, there are other resources required. So that's something that we often think about, and often, think about how best we can prioritize resources. It was interesting to see the results of this survey, and I think, the developmental risk assessment and decision making is something that we've really focused on. And, in my prior experience, I've seen, in larger organizations, how this can be a bit difficult. And so I'm not surprised to see that, actually.